Hi, I'm John Abreu, and today I'm going to show you how to make effects for Instagram. If you've used Instagram stories, then you're probably already familiar with the many effects that you can add to spice up your stories. These effects exist inside of Instagram's story camera, and as you can see, there's a ton of them. A lot of the effects that are there by default are actually made by Instagram, but there's actually a ton of effects that are made by people like you and me. Now, you're probably wondering, where are these third-party effects? Well, if you follow someone who's already made an effect and published it, then it might already be in your tray. You can also scroll all the way to the end of this section, and then you'll see a button that'll let you enter a browse experience for AR effects. And as you can see, there's an entire world of AR effects waiting for you to get up off your phone and create something.
Don't let your dreams. Yesterday, you said tomorrow.
Wait, don't leave. The video's not over yet. Let's dive into what these AR effects are and what kind of effects you can publish to Instagram. Augmented reality, or AR, is an experience where computer-generated imagery is used to enhance or augment a real-world environment. In the case of these Instagram effects, it's taking the video from your phone and overlaying 2D and 3D elements to create something new. Now, there's actually a lot of applications of AR that most of us have already encountered. For one, there's the face tracking effects that you see on Instagram and Snapchat, but there's also other apps like Pokemon Go or the Measure app on iOS devices. Now, I can make a whole video where I just list off every single application of AR, but I'm not going to do that, because that'd be boring. Moving on. The main tool that you use to create and publish effects to Instagram is called Spark AR Studio. Pretty much all of the effects that you see on Instagram were made with this tool. Now you're probably wondering, what can I do with Spark AR today? Great question that no one asked, because I'm in my room by myself. Okay, I've identified 3 categories that most, if not all, AR effects can be placed into. The first one is filters, which alter how the pixels from your camera are rendered. These kinds of effects usually change the colors of your video or put an overlay like film grain or a Polaroid thing. Next are face trackers, which track your face. These effects might have a bunch of objects, 2D and 3D, or they might even have particle emitters, but the defining feature is that they rely on a face mesh, which is tracked to your face. And it looks like this. And last but not least are world trackers. These effects almost always feature 3D objects, and they rely on tracking surfaces in the world. Also, most of the time they only work on the back camera. Okay, so these 3 categories are ones that I've identified, but of course this list is not completely exhaustive. There are so many extremely creative and out there effects that you'd have a hard time pinning down to just one of these categories. I'm only laying these main ones out so that we have a foundation for when we dive into the tools offered by Spark AR Studio. Speaking of which, let's dive in. So this is Spark. When you first open it, you're greeted with a bunch of different templates. There's a few face tracking ones like face decoration, makeup, head decoration. There's also a world tracking one as well as a color filter. We're actually just going to open a blank project so we can dive into the basic functionality. Welcome to the main view of Spark AR. Starting from the top left, we have the menu bar. This is a menu bar, not much to explain there. Below that, we have the video controls, which change what video your effects are being tested on, pause your effect, or just reload it all together. To the right of that, we have the scene and layer panels. This part's super important because it's where you're actually going to be building your effect. At the start, it's just a device, a camera, and some basic lighting configurations. Moving down, we have the assets panel, which is where all the textures, audio files, 3D objects, and everything else you'll include in your effect are going to live. In the bottom left, we have the publishing and export options, which is where you'll either send it to Instagram or test it on an actual device. Now in the middle is the biggest section and the most obvious one, which is the viewport and the simulator. This is where you can see how your effect looks like when you're actually building it. And next to the viewport is the inspector, which is where you'll edit properties of your objects, whether it's the textures or the position or the scales, things like that. Lastly, to add interactivity or more advanced features, you're going to want to go into the patch editor, which you can access by going to View, Show Hide Patch Editor, or just Command Option P. Okay, that was a quick, non-exhaustive overview of Spark AR and the tools inside it. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't go over, but for this video, we're just getting started. Moving on. If you remember the beginning of this video, I showed off 4 different AR effects. Go BC, coding languages, Sharingan, and iridescence. These are the effects that I've made, and you can use them today by going to my Instagram and following me at Abreu with 4 V's everywhere. I'm going to go through each of these and tell you how I built them and how they're doing. The first effect I ever made was Go BC. This effect was supposed to mimic the temporary tattoos that people put on at college football games. If we move into Spark AR, we'll see that this effect is actually pretty simple. There's a face tracker with a face mesh, and on the face mesh is a texture that has the 2 BC logos for the cheeks. Then there's 2 emitters, one for the red confetti and one for the white confetti. An emitter is an object that spits out particles. If we move into the patch editor, we'll see where the actual logic comes in. The first step is that it finds a face, then it checks how open the mouth is, and if the mouth is open past a certain threshold, then it emits confetti for 2.5 seconds. By the way, feel free to pause the video at any point to see the specific blocks that I used. So I'm going to address the elephant in the room and say that this effect is not my best work. And if we dive into the analytics for this effect, we can tell that the rest of the world agreed with me. Since November, about 1,000 people saw it, 64 people tried it, and only 15 people actually posted it anywhere. Whew. My next effect did a little bit better than the first one. It's the "What coding language are you" effect. I made this effect back when the "What blank are you" effects were really popular. Just like many other "What blank are you" effects, you simply start recording, it'll cycle through all the options, and then after a few seconds, it'll randomly pick one. And now you are that programming language. This is a binding agreement. Just like my first effect, this one relies on a face tracker, except now there's two planes inside it. A plane in Spark AR is a 2D surface. One of these planes is the initial question. What programming language are you? And the other plane is used to display the answer once it's selected. In the patch editor, we can see that there's some logic for positioning the planes better. And then there's the main logic of the effect, which says, once the camera is recording, loop through all of the potential answers for about 4 seconds, and then randomly pick one. So did this effect do any better than GoBC? Well, let's just say that this effect is the one that inspired the title of this video. Since I released it in January, the coding languages effect has had over 1 million impressions, 200,000 captures, and 11,000 shares. Rest in peace, GoBC. Okay, jokes aside, this effect was a lot more polished and it had a much wider audience than GoBC. It also helps that this effect was just hopping on a trend. Okay, so following up on coding languages was going to be really hard. So for my next effect, I wanted to make something for me and for all the weebs. That's right, I'm talking about the Sharingan effect. If you don't know what this is, then get the If you don't know what this is, it's the super magic eyeballs that certain characters in Naruto have. This effect is by far my most complicated effect, and if I showed you the patch editor for this one, you might actually cry. I would know, because I did. However, the general approach for making an eye replacement effect is not that complicated. First things first, we need a face tracker and a face mesh, just like we did for the GoBC filter. The main difference here is that we want to make sure that the eyes are cut out in the face mesh, and that the texture in the face mesh is the extracted texture from the face tracker. These two steps are what's going to make your eyeball look like it's actually inside of your head and not just floating on top of your face. After this comes the actual eye replacement. I made a plane and then placed it slightly behind the face mesh. Other people use a 3D object that's shaped like a contact lens, and this usually works a lot better than what I did. If you want me to make a more in-depth tutorial on the Sharingan effect, taking it from blank project to published effect, let me know in the comments. And in terms of performance, this effect did okay. 64,000 impressions, about 1,100 shares, and 900 captures. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I'm a little disappointed that this effect didn't blow up, but I'm really proud of what I published and I'll probably end up updating it in the future. And the last effect that I've published as of April 2020 is the iridescence effect. This one is based off of one of the album covers of my favorite boy band. That's right, Brockhampton. My effect is specifically inspired by their 4th album, aptly titled Iridescence, and I made it because I wanted to learn how to make color filters. In terms of how I built it, I followed this absolutely fantastic tutorial by Josh Beckwith, and he can explain his approach for doing color effects in much better detail than I ever could. So I've linked his tutorial in the description and in the cards. My iridescence effect has had 46,000 impressions, 4,000 captures, and over 900 shares. One interesting thing about this one is that while it has significantly less impressions than the Sharingan effect, the amount of shares is almost the same. What this tells me is that a higher percentage of the people who saw this effect actually shared it. Very interesting stuff. Okay, that's all I have for you today. Like I said, if you want me to make a full tutorial on any of the effects that I talked about, leave me a comment below. Also, if you actually have an effect on Instagram, slide into my DMs at Abreu, 4Bs. I really want to see what you guys come up with. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you have any questions, suggestions, or just want to say hello, drop me a comment below or hit me up on any of my socials, at Abreu with 4Bs everywhere. Adios!